course building. And so this audience is really both to you all as you're creating courses, but we'll talk on some of the little admin aspects in there as well. We'll talk about participants, different ways that you might be enrolling them. Are you all using an integration? Are we integrating to an external service for the purpose of creating accounts or enrollments, or are those going to be manual?
Okta.
Yeah, we're working
Excellent.
with your team on getting the provisioning completed.
Okay, perfect. That's what I
Yeah.
thought. So what we'll talk about then is more about groups and filtering, less about enrolling because those enrollments should be coming over through that integration. Role assignment should also happen through the integration. So whether someone's a learner or has a different role, that typically gets mapped out through the integration, and we can actually assign whatever the roles are. So whether they're facilitator, they're a learner, if you had an observer role or something like that, that we could pull over from that, from your external system, like all of those things happen there. We'll talk a little about that. Get into some course setup and settings. We'll talk about some of the course completion settings. So when we talked before about, the sales enablement team and things and what we want them to do, some of what needs to happen is completion of activities to trigger course completion and things like that. We can talk about certificates and badges also. You may want to use one or the other or a combination of them. And we'll talk about kind of how those are created, where people will see them and get them, and what we can do with badges. We have about an hour today. We'll do our best to get through all of this. If we can get through this, the next bit of information that we have in here, sorry, I'm just like, there we go, is getting into some of the creating the learning environment. So talking about some of the activities. And there were some specific ones that we had talked about, which included like under activities, assignment. You had mentioned that you already have been creating rubrics. You're pretty skilled at that. So we'll just talk about how we can put them into Moodle. And then you can have them either standalone attached to just an assignment, or they can become templates on the site so you can use them from course to course. What we can do with forum. We talked one of the requests was to look at glossary, which we like to use when we're creating like kind of a collection of information that people can search. And then we can get into a little bit with lesson and wiki. And that's kind of where we are for right now. So let's jump in to some of the course building training here. So we are going to come right into the site. I have it up already. We're going to go right in here to this Moodle Basics course, where we had changed that course card there and made a different image. When it comes into being in a course, when you create a course brand new, which you probably have already started to test out, you're going to come to that course settings page. With existing courses, we can access that course settings page by coming to that. You have a blue cog in the upper right-hand corner that if we click here, the first option is called Edit Settings, and that's actually going to take you to your course management panel. So this is where all of your course settings are. Let's close the nav drawer and let me make sure that I'm zoomed in here. I am good. So a couple of things. When you create a course, you can use the course full name over and over again. That doesn't have to be unique. The course short name does always have to be unique. So this particular course is aimed at Moodle version 3.10. But it only needs to be different by one character. So it may be that you have a version or a year or something to separate this course from a previous version of this course. Just know that the short name always has to be unique. The course category is pulling from the course and category management area in our site administration panel. So if we don't know what category we want something to go in, that's okay, because we can freely move these different categories if we need to reorganize how our courses are laying out. But ultimately, your categories on your site are going to translate to tenants when you move to the multi-tenant version of things. And so as we're creating course categories, we'll be able to make those categories become a tenant down the road. It'll just make that a little bit easier. But you can move courses around if you end up putting them in the wrong category or need them somewhere else. Visibility is set here, so show or hide. The visibility has to be set manually. It's not dependent on the start and end date. So I think it's one of the features we're all asking for, which is, can Moodle make it that if we hit the start date, then course visibility automatically switches to show? We would love for that to happen, but it doesn't. So you have to make courses visible either here or through the course and category management page. You'll see the little eye icon there, and you can open and close things there. But what start and end date do influence is where people see this course on their dashboard. So if we have not yet reached the course start date, this will show in a tab called Future on that dashboard. If we have already gone past the end date, courses will move to the Past tab. And so occasionally you'll have people say, I don't see this course. And it might be that they're enrolled and it's open, but we haven't hit the course start date yet. We can manually set end dates, but if you're not using end dates and those courses are going to be kind of rolling, we have rolling enrollment in them, then you can by all means uncheck this calculate the end date from the number of sections and also untick the enable button here for course end date. And then the course just stays open and then you can have rolling enrollment. Course description does not show once people come into the course. They only see this if they're kind of navigating around and looking at a listing of the courses and things like that. When you transition over to the new work product, I am not 100% sure that this piece stays the same, but in what was the old code base for that, when people saw like on their dashboard the course card, they would see the course description there as well. There's that image. We've already done a lot of this. And we talked about course format already and the different options there. So it's just our recap of what's there in the course administration panel. Let's just save and display. I am going to move this over here. There we go. All right. So we've gone through all of that. Now, course completion settings is next on our agenda here. So we access that in the same way that we access those course settings by coming up to this cog up here. Now, what I encourage people to do is just come right down to more. It gives you a nicer looking area to see all of the course admin options. So up top, you'll see that we have a couple of options. We had the edit settings, which we went to already. Course completion is in here. Filters is in here. I actually can't remember if we touched on filters, but I want to bring it up now that we're here. If we click into filters, these are, you'll see anything that says the word default. Those are set at the site level, and it means that we can change that setting at the site level. So display H5P, we like to keep that on. Convert URLs into links and images. Looks like we have good. That activity names auto linking is turned off. And so we must have actually talked about this and how it's kind of it's a interesting feature. So basically, if I've created an activity, the first time I created, every time I use that activity title, if auto linking is on, it'll create a link that goes right back to that activity every time. It can be helpful, but it can also be difficult. So I can remember the first time I used this, I had objectives or outcomes with a label or a page actually in week 1. Every time I said the word outcomes, a link would be created and go back to week 1. So when I created an outcomes page for week 2, it like hyperlinked and took me to week 1. So the problem with activity auto linking is that whatever the first created activity is with that name, every time you use that exact string throughout the course, it's going to automatically link to wherever that first document was. It's great if everything's going to have a unique name and it makes sense to reference things. But if it's on and you don't want it on and you come in and turn it off, you then have to break all of the activity auto links afterwards. So it doesn't just reset them. So we tell people to trial that and see if they think it's something that works for them. If it doesn't and you'd rather it's off by default, but people still have the option to turn it on, we can make that change on the site level. On your site, the default right now is set to on. Other things here, MathJax is a filter that's always on by default. Your Kaltura media filter here is on, and your multimedia plugins are on, and they're on by default at the site level. Anything that says default in front of it is usually something we can change at the site level if we need to. So come back out here, come back up to our cog. No more. Course completion can be used for a variety of things. So we can use course completion so that if we're pulling completion reports, we can see who has and has not completed the required courses. We can trigger some other things that happen based on course completion. More often than not, this is for the purpose of reporting. Even if we're issuing certificates and badges, we can make those dependent upon people completing activities in the course. Those activities may be the same ones that qualify for course completion, but we have to kind of set those up a little differently. You'll see the completion settings here are locked because some people have already completed this course. but basically you have all of these options. Under general, we will have the option here to choose if the course is completed when we complete all of the things that we check down here or any of them. If it's set to any, people only have to meet one condition that we set for the course to register as complete. So if we have different conditions, we need them to do all of the activities, we want to make sure that's set to all. In this course, we have set completion to be based on activity completion. So we start to see how things feed up to one another. Enabling activity completion at the individual activity is going to feed into course completion. What you'll see in this list is every activity in this course that has some sort of completion setting enabled. If you want people to complete certain activities as a condition for course completion, you want to make sure that the activity is set to the activity completion is set to when conditions are met and not the student must check it off. Because if someone has to check something off complete on their own and they don't realize that and they don't check it off, and that's part of course completion won't register. So when we're talking about course completion, we like to make sure that the activities that feed into it are set with conditions so that they automatically trigger as complete when a learner meets the condition. And we'll look at what those options are in a minute. I'll scroll quickly, but there are some other options here. We can also require that they've completed another course as part of the course completion for this one. So if what they need to do is complete certain activities in this course and have completed their first like introductory course related to this in order for this course here to mark complete, we can make that happen. And you would basically just click the drop down here and you would have a drop down again that allows you to select other courses on the site. You have the option for completion on a certain date, an enrollment duration, completion on unenrollment, dependent on a specific course grade. So if you get going and you start certifying people for things and you have a minimum level of achievement, a minimum grade, you could say that the course is not complete until they've done the activities and achieved a certain grade. So you have a lot of options here. Manual self completions, that means that someone can mark the course complete on their own. Manual completion by others means that one of you would go in and have to tick the course as complete for people in order for them to register course completion. I would say these last two conditions are the least frequently used next to the enrollment duration and the unenrollment. Most times we're looking for a course to be completed when someone has completed the associated activities. So what we saw in there was that for course completion, a lot that depended heavily on activity completion. So let's take a look at what that looks like. We'll turn our editing on here, and there we are. We'll come down into something like the quiz here. And I'm going to click here to edit settings and go into this quiz. Way down, we have activity completion. And there we have the options. We'll have three. Don't indicate activity completion, which I often use if I have something that's like a label or not something they actually need to interact with. Manually mark as complete was that option I was telling you about. So that's for things that it'd be nice if they completed them, but the learner actually has to tick the box off in order for that to mark complete. Activity complete when conditions are met is the automated piece to that. And most resource type activities, so page or book, the only option there is going to be when someone views it. Same thing with a URL. But when it comes to an actual activity like an assignment or a quiz or a forum, we will have more options for criteria here. We can require that they view it, require a grade, require a passing grade. So this is a quiz. I could say you have to get an 80% or above. Require that they take the quiz a certain number of times. I will tell you that for most of these activities, you don't also need to tick require view in addition to something like require grade. If it's a quiz, you can't actually get a grade on the quiz until you've viewed the quiz. But so what happens if we tick both is that the course logs will show that activity has been completion was updated, but not registered. Like if someone views something and doesn't meet the other criteria. So usually I just picked the more strict here. So if I'm requiring a passing grade, I actually don't even tick this required grade one. So different for each person, right? So I can mix and match what I'm doing here. Um, but this activity completion then, because criteria has been set here, this shows up on an option that we can choose under course completion. So basically, it starts to build on one another. Each activity is viewed as an important piece of the course. The combination of the activities can be used to register course completion. Um, I think we might have talked about some of these things. There's a couple of things that you have in here. Okay, so this is a quiz. You'll see that Safe Exam Browser appears here. This is a lockdown browser that's built into the system. If you would prefer, if you know that that's not something you would use, we can actually take away the visibility of it so it doesn't show as an option here in quizzes. If it's enabled, then it creates, people will have to download Safe Exam Browser and launch it in order to access the quiz. Um, Typically, if it's just you all creating the course content, I wouldn't worry as much about it. We do have a couple of clients who ask for it to be hidden because they've brought in other course creators or content creators and have accidentally had Safe Exam Browser turned on by accident. Someone wasn't really sure what it was, and then that prevented people from accessing quizzes. So if you do start using quizzes and things, and you want that hidden, you just let us know.
Can you go ahead and hide that now? We've already decided we would never be using that.
Yep, you got it. So, all right, I'm going to make a note because that's going to require us to go in and make some permission changes. That will take a chunk of time here that we won't use on the meeting, but we've got that marked down and we will keep going, but we'll make that so you don't see them anymore. All right. So activity completion, as I mentioned, is a bit different from activity to activity. We looked at the quiz. Let's come down here and look at what happens if you have a page. So a page is going to be a resource. You'll have limited options for activity completion because people aren't designed to really interact with it. They're designed to click on it and move along. So activity completion here is going to be either manually mark as complete, no activity, or conditions. And the only condition that exists is that you have to view it to complete it. So for things like page or book, label, URL, these are the only options you're going to have. If you're ever wondering, is this something where I can set activity completion? The quickest way to tell is just to come into any section here, add an activity or resource, click on the resources tab. These are all things that for the most part, you will likely only be able to enable completion to be someone viewed it. Not 100% sure. Let's check out the resource, the video resource here and just see what the options are here. So yeah, so the only option right now, because I don't have the video in there, is going to be do not indicate or people can manually mark as complete. But anything that's under that resources tab is going to be something where people pretty much viewing it is the only condition you'll have. All right. Any questions about like activity completion, how that feeds to course completion?
Nope.
Close out a few. I got a whole bunch of browsers open. All right. So let's keep going then. There we go. Okay. So back here onto the course page. We wanted to talk a bit about the Addo editor today. That's something that we tend to talk about pretty regularly. You're going to see the Addo editor anywhere that you can edit text. We'll use a page just by way of example. But what you're going to see here is anytime you have the ability to add text, you have this editor toolbar. We can click to expand that, and that's going to give us a few more options here. So we have the paragraph styles. Yep, go ahead. Okay, Ruth will be right back. All right, awesome. We have a couple of things as far as like formatting. If you ever need to add something that's either an ordered or unordered list, so bulleted or numbered, the key here is that if you are copying and pasting that information from somewhere else, so you have that maybe on a document of some sort, when you bring it over, you actually need to remove the bullets or numbering beforehand because when we copy and paste things, usually with bullets, and we just paste them in instead of paste as plain text, they often bring in bad HTML, which actually will break the course as a whole. You'll know it when it happens. When it happens, you might see something like the footer bar is actually now floating in the center of the course, or all your edit buttons look like they're in a weird place, or you might see that looks like content's overlapping one another. Those are times when we've brought bad HTML in. We can clean that up for you, but typically what it is it's most often related to bulleting. So we usually go through the different activities, look for the bullets, we find the content, we cut it out of the course, paste it into a text editor, and remove all the formatting before putting it back in. Indent, outdent. We can create links here. So if we had the title of something, we can just highlight it and create a link. I like to use h5p.org. In here, you can choose also for your link to open in a new window. So if we've done this and we create the link, for accessibility purposes, we actually need to tell our users what the target for this window, for this link is. If it's going to open in a new window, we want to let them know that that happens. Michael and I have recently been working with the Brickfield Education Labs Accessibility Toolkit, and it did flag us for every time when we were trying to indicate that something was opening in a new window. So Michael, what was our end? What was the last thing we figured out there? How did we need to indicate that in order for it to be in compliance with that accessibility toolkit?
So the closest that I found so far is directly before the link. It needs to say something to the effect of opens a new tab or opens a new window, and ideally part of the link itself. We're also exploring a code-based option that would basically modify any external link on your site, like any link that's set to open in a new tab or window, and add some hidden code behind it that would indicate someone using a screen reader that that link opens in a new window. That way you don't have to see opens a new window every single time you type in an external link. But I would have to keep you posted on that one. We're still working with the tier 2 team to see if that's possible.
So just know that if you do an accessibility audit, that is sometimes something that comes up. We want to let people know where that opens. In the past, Michael and I always put it after the link opens in a new window, and the toolkit would flag that for us every time. But as Michael said, we're working on a code-based solution for that. Then have your emojis here. Obviously, the full emoji picker. Um, this is relatively new, but one of the things to note about this is if I hover over something, what you'll see next to the image on the bottom is the actual code. So you have colon, frowning, colon. And the reason that you see that is that's telling you exactly what a screen reader is going to read to someone. So it'll tell them that there's like an image emotion, emojicon, and then it will tell them exactly what it is. So in this case, it would be frowning. In this one, it's fearful. Exploding head. So that's exactly how things will be read to someone using a screen reader. Um, you can also add images. For the purpose of accessibility, you will be required to give alternative text for your images or tick that the image is decorative only. The size rendering here, what will happen is when we put an image in, it is going to, let me grab an image. Just took a couple this morning. Go. What's going to happen down below? Oh, did I freeze? Upload. There we go. All right. And you're going to see that now this window is enormous. And the size here is over 2000 by 500. You have a representative display down below. So as I adjust this, that image will re-render there. So I know exactly how large it's going to be when I put it on the picture. Auto size is going to lock the aspect ratio so that we can, adjust that and keep making it smaller. Alignment. Bottom means it's going to go, text is going to go to the bottom. So basically, if you want the text to wrap around the image like we have in the description area, we're going to put this to the left. So let's try that. Has to have alternative text. You will not be allowed to save unless you have alternative text or you've marked that it's decorative only. Your alternative text will allow you up to 125 characters to be as descriptive as possible. You don't need to say things like image of. The screen reader will automatically let people know that that's an image. Because I've arranged this to the left, so it's a left justification, the other text that was here on the same line has now moved to the right, so I can put text around the image. A screen reader is going to read the image first and tell someone what it is with the alt text, and then go through and read the text associated with it. I know that you all will probably, more than likely, you will be using your own media repository for things. So we will not get too into some of the ways that you can add media here on the site, but you do have an option here to upload if you have like a source link or you're connecting to your repository. So I would imagine that we're going to look at having the Kaltura media repository right here, where you're able to connect out to that. And if we do, then you'd be able to pull media in that way. You can also upload images or browse from a repository again that way. Or if you're just uploading audio, you will have the same exact options where you can upload or pull from a repository. With audio, you can also upload subtitle and captioning tracks here. So if you have them already done, you can actually link them in and put them in there. One of the things that Michael and I have been using pretty frequently is embedding something like an H5P accordion activity below the video. So if you're bringing the video in from a repository and then you needed to provide a transcript, if you use the H5P accordion activity, which you can do by embedding right here in the Addo toolbar, you can have a little banner that basically says the transcript, is here. And when people click the accordion, it expands and the full transcript is available on the exact same page that the image is available on. Or that the video is available on. I'm going to ask Michael to queue up an example of that, and we'll switch our share screen once he has that up so you can see what we're talking about. But you have the ability to add video from different ways. These two buttons here, the fully solid colored microphone and camera, are the options to record directly within the site, very short snippets. I don't anticipate you needing to use these. They work okay. There are some problems with using them on certain browsers sometimes, but this gives you just 2 minutes of recording time within the site to record something very short. Over here, we have the ability to manage files. And if I click this, what it's going to tell me is all of the files that I have on this page. So you can see that I've got that image. I can actually just upload or download all the files from this page if I need to, but it lets me just see what's going on here. Then we have that embed H5P option. So H5P is our interactive content. So even if we're not going to use things like our H5P, like interactive video or anything, like if that's not really where we're looking to go, we might be using this to add some little feature enhancements to existing Moodle options. And that accordion feature is one of those. Michael, let me know when you have one queued up so you can kind of show them what we do with that. We are able to pull from anything we create in our content bank. So if we've made any H5P in the content bank, we can pull right from it and embed it anywhere that we see this H5P embed button. So that is going to be due anywhere that you see the Addo editor. Cool. I'll wrap up Addo editor and then I'm going to send it over to Michael so you can kind of see an example of what we're talking about. These have more editing features. You also have an equation editor here if you ever need to have mathematical equations. You can insert characters, so special characters. Tables in Moodle look really terrible because they're purely functional and not aesthetic. So they are meant only to present data in table format. They aren't meant to organize things or make them look nice, which is often what tables are used for. Tables in Moodle are fully accessible. They will be read by the screen reader. They do not support nesting within. So if you have a table, try to nest another table inside, that will not work with a screen reader. This option here is to switch over to the HTML version or to clear out any formatting. So if I copied and pasted text in and now it looks all wild, I can highlight it and hit this button here and it should wipe out that option, all that formatting. I can undo and redo things. So if I make a mistake, I can undo it. If I delete it by accident, I can redo it. I then have these two options here. The first is a screen reader helper, or the first is the accessibility checker, and then a screen reader helper. These are the very basic built-in ones. Accessibility checker will look and see if there's any like glaring accessibility problems. Long passages of text without labels or without headers is the first one that typically comes up for me. But it is not your sole defense against accessibility issues. This particular checker is just a very rough glance over things. The screen reader helper will tell you what styles there are, any links and how they're going to display, and then images in the text editor and whether or not they have alt text. If I click this option, it's going to redirect me over to that image so that I know which one we're looking at. Basically just tells you the things that a screen reader might pick up. There are other things that we can add to the Addo toolbar. So if there are things that you've heard of and don't see here, let us know.
And just to let Zach know that as part of our Kaltura integration, there'll also be a Kaltura logo here where we can get to our video and our My Media.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, Donna, because I was just going to say, and we don't see the Kaltura one here yet, but we will. So that is an option. It will sit very much like the H5P one. You can kind of tell us where you want it to go. We have some control over these things. And then you'll see it, and when you click it, that'll take you right to your media repo. So it's pretty helpful to have it there, just to be able to pull things in pretty quickly. I'm going to stop share for a minute. Michael's going to share out just to show you what I was talking about with that accordion activity in case it is something that might be useful to you.
All right, and I'm actually just pulling up a file so I can show you what this would look like. Uh, I have not shared screen just yet. Where is the document that I'm looking for? I think this is it. All right. I can show you a couple of different things once I get screen share set up here, and then I will show you what it looks like to actually create one of these really quickly because they're very easy to make. So that you can see what it might look like, because right now the videos I'm using are embedded through YouTube, but I wanted to give you an idea of what it might look like elsewhere in the course if you were using it alongside a Kaltura video that's been embedded. So right now I'm just in our H5P creator course. So I'm going to look at a content type called a column as well as an interactive book. And in this case, we have a large embedded video, and this is that accordion style activity that Amy was mentioning. It's right here. So basically you just get this nice little header, and you can click to expand that optionally, and it will show the full transcript on the page. As you can see, this adds quite a bit of length to the page, which is why I really like using accordion alongside video or audio files, because it makes it completely optional, right? It makes the page much shorter if I choose to use this or not. So this is helpful for students who might be using a screen reader. It's helpful for students who, let's say, or I'm sorry, learners who have watched the video, but then they need to refer back to it and they don't necessarily want to scroll through the entire video. They want to find a specific spot by reading through. It also works really well for learners who maybe have ADHD or auditory sensory processing disorders who benefit more from being able to access the text alongside the video. And again, just a really clever setup, I think, to use those two activities again. Here's another H5P content type called an interactive book that I'm a really big fan about and could talk about way too long. And again, just the video with the accordion style here. So it's expandable. You can even use these not just for transcripts, but for other content. To give you a quick example, in this interactive book, I've used the accordion to include additional information that collectively would have made my page significantly longer. But using the accordion, I can make this page more reasonable and easier to navigate because the headings are all right here. Creating one of these is really simple. I'm going to go ahead and add one into this book so that you can see what that would look like. And all I'm going to do, I'm worried I might be jumping too far ahead because I know we haven't talked about H5P just yet, but I'm in a part of the site called the Content Bank where you can create H5P. And literally all I'm doing here is I'm going to give this a title. I'm going to title what that heading should look like to my learners, and then I'm just going to paste in the text. That's really all that it is. So this is going to be a transcript for timeline. I call that timeline transcript again. Should have just copied and pasted this text. There it is. So let me go ahead and save this. That's now in a repository behind the scenes. And I'm going to go ahead and edit this. This is just in a Moodle book within the course. So here's my video. This would essentially be where your Kaltura video would be. I'll hit enter. And like Amy was mentioning, I can use that H5P button to then embed this in. Let me go ahead and browse repositories and I'm going to search for timeline transcript. I'm going pretty quickly here. I recognize that, but what I'm doing is not so much as important as how it will look and how easily it can be done. You can see that was just a handful of clicks. And so now I've got my transcript right here. Let me go ahead and turn editing off. because I think the theming on this site is a little off. But I have my timeline transcript right here. It'll look different on yours. Ours needs a little bit of touch up with the theming. But now I have my transcript directly underneath that video. So this is what it might look like if you were using one of your own embedded videos instead of something through YouTube. But very easy to build, very easy to add. We like them quite a bit. It's a great complement to having captions on the video too, because folks can actually go through the transcript. It makes it a lot easier to find specific passages and cite those. So I'm a really big fan.
Just a moment, because I'm like watching this thinking, okay, like, what are we doing here? But our videos all come with a transcript widget already. So the transcripts in the video, it's searchable. It comes from Kaltura.
Gotcha. Okay.
I was loving the accordion thing though. Like, I'm like, can we use the accordion in other ways?
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. Yeah. Transcript was just one of those ones that we really try and emphasize with clients because we want them to make accessible content. So, but yeah, it can be used in a wide variety of ways.
You're expecting them to have the transcript? Is that what I'm hearing? Like they would have the transcript and upload it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that's all part and parcel with Kaltura.
Yeah, but so, and it's a good way though to show too how accordion can be used in a lot of ways. So like Michael said, when I have something that has lots of different information, accordion is a really nice way to put it somewhere, but not have that page be extremely long. People can expand.
Yeah, that's what I was getting into.
Yep.
And then I was so confused about the transcript piece.
Yeah.
I'm like, but we don't need that.
Right. So transcript is just a good example of how we show people that, because one of the other things people do is they'll put transcript out on a separate page, or when we have used the accordion activity to, instead of having multiple different activities, we now have one where people can go through, like an interactive book was something Michael mentioned, where they have one activity and they can go through and they have these different content types. So definitely a lot of ways that you can use that accordion feature. There's a lot of really interesting things there in H5P for how you can like lay things out. Especially if you have experience at all, like using SCORM packages. And so H5P is a completely free way to build that same type of interactive content. But I really like the accordion feature because I think it's useful in other places too.
Yeah. Beyond that, like what other things does it do? Like we have an interactive paths tool where we can build path videos and things. Like what other things can H5P do?
So H5P, same idea with the interactive videos, very similar to what you're doing, but there's also something called a branching scenario that you can build out where you can create like a real world scenario. Kind of plays out like one of the choose your own adventure books.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to as a path video. So we have that.
You have
tool.
that.
Yeah.
Yep. And there's just a plain old regular interactive video, which is the video plays, and you can embed interactions throughout, and whether those interactions are questions or whatever.
And we have that.
Yeah.
I think we probably, most of it's what we already have.
So there's also
wouldn't use.
Right. So when it comes to like non-video based things, though, you have a lot of other things. So you've got accordion, you have things like course presentation, which is like if you created a slide deck, but you wanted there to be interactions as people kind of went through self-paced through that. There's a book. So interactive book lets you create a whole book, and then you can embed all kinds of other things inside of it. So text or image hotspot type of activities. And so when it comes to image hotspot activities, let me just show you a real quick example of a book, because I can actually show you all of the different things that are available there. They have one built. We have a couple built, but they have a really nice one built on their website. And let me just bring it up and I'll share out the interactive book. Okay. Here we go. There's this. Okay. So I'm just out here at the h5p.org website. And the first thing we see is we come up with this book. They've titled it interactive book with this description. And when you're ready to go in, you just click read. So these are just images here. And then this is a text element. This is an image hotspot. So I have the image. And when I click the plus mark, I'll get a slide out that gives me additional information about something. So if I wanted to show like a screenshot of our product, or your product, I could actually do like a screenshot that highlights different things. Or if there's something specific I want to give someone information about, and an image makes the best sense for that, I can set that up. These are tables that are set up here that are built with an editor in H5P. And then we have these, this is called a single choice set type question. So we can ask someone a question about the content that they're looking at, and they can answer it, and then they can go through. There's an auditory cue that I'm able to hear if I'm doing something, if I'm answering something the right way. And as I go through these different questions, they load and I'm able to answer them. Looks like I'm frozen there for a second. And then down here, I have a drag and drop. And so in this case, I'm going to make a strawberry smoothie, and I have to add the ingredients over to my cup. And then when I'm done, I can check and show my score. Good, I remembered them all this time. And then I can go on to the next page in my book. And this is raspberries. And so here they've added a video, some information. And here they're using a missing, fill in the missing word type of activity. So when you create the book, you can add a lot of different elements that perhaps before we broke up into individual activities on the course page. We can do something different here, and we can put a lot of information in one place and then just make it easier to read using things like accordion or that image hotspot activity, and then people can navigate through. My one tip, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to say for Zach, like Zach, this might be something that we were thinking of for our intro.
I'm looking at this,
right?
and I'm
because
thinking,
I'm looking at it from the book standpoint. From the video piece, I think we have it covered, but I like this book. And interestingly enough, like I've known about, I've known soft chalk for so many years, and I'm like, this is soft chalk stuff, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's so funny because we had another client who said the exact same thing last week. We were at our training, like, oh, this is just like what we've been doing with soft chalk.
Yeah,
and we're like, yes, but it's free. So
yeah,
free and completely built into the site. Yeah. The other cool thing is, let's say you did decide to make a book and you made it on the site. You make it in your content bank, which is right alongside here. It's got the little paintbrush. Let's say later on, I realized I had an accidental typo in there. If I had, when I'm in the content bank, if I fix it in the content bank, I create in the content bank and then I add separately into the course. If when I add it to the course, it's called a link, then if I update it in the content bank, those updates automatically push out everywhere that I've linked that book. So now I have like more of a centralized place to be able to do some, control and revision and things like that. But there are, if you click the add button here, you're going to see all of these content types. Michael and I are like super passionate, love H5P, but what I would tell you to do is check out this h5p.org site, because they build examples and downloads for all of the content type to kind of start to get an idea of, book looks great. Another cool one is column, which is really all book is. It's a series of column. A couple of others. So there's that accordion activity there. But other ones that I think, might be helpful too is this documentation tool is pretty interesting. So if you ever need people to submit something back, like they fill out a form for some reason, they can do that with the documentation tool. So you're kind of creating like a form wizard. So if you want them to practice filling out something that they would normally fill out on the computer screen or whatever, just as a practice, you can do that. So you can replicate like screens that they might see if you were using, say, Salesforce or something. We can replicate some of that. Oh, I think you're muted, Donna.
Sorry, I have my heater running in the background. Okay. I know it's annoying. So I was just going to say, so for a Salesforce example, you could have the fields where they would go in and enter the information.
Yeah. And so if you look at this example that they have here, this is, we have all of the documents here. We can have people fill in different fields there. You're laying it out with some text things. If it's something like where they need to goal set, I'm asking someone to tell me what your goals are for 2022 professional goals. They can actually add goals, and then later they can assess whether or not they've achieved those goals. So they achieve them partially or completely. So now we can start to use it in a variety of ways, but you can add any of these. You can add just documentation, regular entry pages. You can have them put in like plans. So we have like options for what people can fill in, long things. They can evaluate what's going on. They can assess goals. But I really like it because we are using Salesforce, and we're thinking like, okay, how do we give people the opportunity to enter things in without actually entering anything over on Salesforce yet? And this is how we're going to do it. We're going to recreate some of those fields. And the information you see here that's grayed out in the box, you actually choose what goes there. So you can give people some prompts or examples of how that data should be entered. So when they are in the live system, they know exactly what they need to do. So what we've been doing is we can actually bring this up and kind of use it as a tutorial on the side for the first time people are creating those Salesforce entries, because we have the prompts filled in the little guidance document here that we use with documentation tool. So there's a lot of really cool things that you can build. And I just definitely would encourage you to like come out here, check out the examples they have. They've built out some pretty cool ones. There's a lot of different things you can do. The other thing to know about H5P is even though we can use it in Moodle, you can actually use H5P anywhere that you can embed an iframe. So on like lots of people are actually putting it on WordPress sites, or if they're using Drupal, there's all kinds of places that you can actually put H5P once you create it. You actually just take the embed code or you download the package and then you can embed it in an iframe anywhere that you can do an iframe. So lots of pretty cool things that you can do with it. The only one I would say don't look at is this impressive presentation. It's an example here. You won't see it on the site, and that's because it only came out in an alpha version and they never took it any further. It's kind of here, I think, for people who like to play around with things, but you won't see it on the actual site. But that's yeah, you can do a lot with that. So you might find that it pairs well with some of the other things that you're working on and some of the other things that you use like soft chalk and things like that in the past. We are seeing people like replace things like articulate and stuff like that using some H5P activities.
Cool. We definitely need to check into that a little bit more. Do you know if there is a like a PowerPoint viewer where I've seen it in other people's sites where, like, and SoftChalk has it of just being able to click through the slides in one screen. Is that part of
Sort of. So
one of
it's
them?
not going to be for PowerPoint. You would have to actually take your PowerPoint stuff and put it into their version of course presentation. One of the things about Office is that it will not display directly in the site, right? So that's the problem. There's not a viewer that exists.
Right.
And that was something that got discontinued by Microsoft quite a while ago. So people end up downloading it and then having to open PowerPoint, which is a pain because if they don't have PowerPoint
Yeah, we
or
don't want
whatever.
that. Yeah.
So there's a couple of things that I've done in the past. One is to like make a video of the slide deck, but the problem is then it plays at whatever and people have to pause it. But they do have something called course presentation. And so we've just been sort of bringing things over. I'll just show it to you really quickly. It's up top. One of the things I do is I take like our branded slide deck and I make it the background for something. So then it looks like it's on our stuff. These are just text boxes. People can navigate through. We can ask them questions as they're going through the slide deck if we want, or we can just transfer the information in. Basically, though, I take our branded deck and I make it the background for the slide, so it looks like a branded deck all the way through, and then I just copy and paste the text in. That's really the only feature. There is a feature request into H5P asking people, which is asking H5P to develop a converter. Like I want to be able to take my PowerPoint, load it in the converter, and it automatically becomes a course presentation. So I do know it's a feature request that's in there and their dev team is working on it, but that converter does not work yet. So that's the long-winded answer to like not really a PowerPoint viewer.
You made me wonder what's Cloudberries.
Oh yeah, so they're apparently part of their
What is this?
yeah. So cloudberries
They look so good.
they're part of the rose family, right? I thought the same. And I had like I don't know if you ever heard of this, the Universal Yum box. You can order this box that comes every month and it's supposed to be food from around the world. And there was something that was cloudberry flavored. And I was really excited after seeing this. But they are part of the rose family, apparently. And they are common in Scandinavia. So the only place I have ever seen something cloudberry flavored is at a Scandinavian store down in Connecticut where I can get like different jams. And I was able to get one there. But yeah, and then if you keep going through this, you can learn about red currants as well. And then they talk about blueberries. All right. So that's a little like kind of a breezy introduction to H5P there. I think you'll have plenty of training hours. So that's even something that, because I don't think we've scheduled all your training hours out, we can actually continue. We can add some H5P if you start to say, hey, just show us how to do these things. Michael also put in the chat down there. As part of our academy, we run an H5P creator course and it focuses solely on creating different H5P content. We will run that again in March of 2022. We're actually finishing up 2 cohorts of it right now. And we go through all of the different content types and things. For things like interactive video, that wouldn't necessarily apply to you. You already have that covered. Wouldn't be a place that, that's only one topic that we have in there, but we build out probably, I would say we have close to 15 or so different H5P content types that we go into. We give use case scenarios, tutorial videos, and all of our academy courses are supplemented by a weekly live 1 hour webinar that we go through. And so we actually do some supplemental teaching and things there. So yeah, so that's H5P. We are at 11 o'clock. Did we want to extend out because we started late, or do you want to stop now and then I will revise the agenda, send it to you, and send you some additional dates and times? What works for all of you?
Donna, your call.
I have
My
no
calendar is
preference. I
actually
don't
blocked
know.
for another hour. so-
Yeah. Zach, how are you? How is your calendar?
My calendar?
Let's, if Ruth wants to attend, let's just go ahead and reschedule the other time if we can.
Yeah, let's do that.
No, so I'm saying I've got mine, like in terms of the invite that I got, I still have a whole hour left for this meeting.
This
So
because
that's
I
what
shifted that invite. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm saying I can join.
Okay. I thought you were
if
saying
needed.
you were busy. Sorry.
No,
I
no, no. So I
misunderstood.
said I already
But
have it blocked.
But I don't know about Amy. If the team, are you still free for another hour? Or
I'm free for another hour. I think Jamie is. Michael may have to jump off. He's got another meeting in 15 minutes, but I'm happy to continue on. Or we can revise the agenda so that we consolidate some things and we can add an hour somewhere else if that works. I know that it's probably pretty late for you, Ruth. Probably getting late in the day, but whatever
Donna,
works
you're
for the
cool.
team is good with
I-
us.
I
I know
can-
you were in a meeting for an hour before you got to us, so whatever works for you.
I'm
if
happy
you
to
can-
continue if.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's keep going. All right. Let's take a quick 5-minute break though, so everybody can get up and stretch. I know that you've been in some like a marathon of meetings here. So we'll stop share. We'll pause the recording. And when we come back, we're going to start with how we generate certificates, talk a little bit about badges. And then if there's anything specific that you really want me to get to today, let me know and we'll make sure that we cover that. But we'll see you back here in 5 minutes.
Thank you.